Hey there. It's time to settle in and let the noise of your world fade away. Tonight, our story takes us into the chaotic and hilarious side of the Dragon Ball universe. Picture yourself, training, focused, and powerful, when an urgent call from Bulma sends you on a bizarre mission across the galaxy. You'll board a spaceship with Goku and Vegeta, all to stop an evil villain. If you enjoy drifting off to strange adventures like this, feel free to subscribe so we can journey together again. For now though, just get comfortable, close your eyes, and let this cosmic quest begin. The waterfall was a perfect training partner. It never got tired, it never complained, and its constant roaring pressure was the ideal resistance for practicing your Kai control. You were holding a massive column of water suspended 100 feet in the air, sweat beading on your forehead, your muscles screaming in protest. The goal was to hold it for a full 10 minutes, a personal best. You were at 9 minutes and 47 seconds. Your focus was absolute. The world had narrowed to the strain in your arms and the sound of the churning water. A small family of monkeys had gathered in the trees to watch, chittering encouragement, or possibly just wondering when the giant water balloon would pop. The alpha monkey, a grizzled old fellow with a scar over one eye, seemed particularly invested, nodding sagely as you maintained your form. 48, 49, 50, and then your phone rang. The ringtone, a cheesy pop song Bulma had set as a joke, and you'd never figured out how to change, shattered your concentration like a rock through a window. The massive pillar of water you were holding collapsed with a cataclysmic crash that probably registered on the local seismographs, sending the monkey family scurrying for higher ground with indignant shrieks. You were drenched, furious, and fumbling for the phone in your pocket. The caller ID read, "Bulma brief, emergency." You sighed, a plume of steam rising from your body as your key flared in annoyance. With Bulma, the line between a genuine world-ending catastrophe and her running out of milk for her coffee was terrifyingly thin. Last week's Code Crimson catastrophe was just her misplacing her car keys, which, to be fair, had the launch codes for a planet-destroying satellite on the keychain. You answered, ready to unleash a torrent of waterlogged frustration. "This had better be important, Bulma. I was in the middle of a breakthrough. The monkeys were about to start a slow clap." "No time," she practically shrieked, her voice a frantic buzz of static and panic. "Get to Capsule Corp now. It's a code mauve situation." You paused, dripping onto the muddy ground as the water from the now decimated river flowed around your boots. A code mauve? What is that? We've had code red for alien invasions and code black for when a god of destruction shows up for lunch. What on earth is code mauve? There was a sound of a minor explosion on her end of the line, followed by what sounded suspiciously like Vegeta yelling about his favorite pink Badman shirt being shrunk in the wash. "It's a new code," Bulma yelled, her voice strained. "I had to invent it this morning. It's for threats that are weird and potentially delicious. Now stop asking questions and get here. The fate of the universe might depend on it. Or at least, the fate of my new experimental muffin recipe. Just hurry." The line went dead. You stood there, soaked to the bone, utterly bewildered. A weird, delicious threat. An experimental muffin recipe? This was either the most ridiculous false alarm in history, or the beginning of the strangest adventure you'd ever had. Knowing Bulma and the Z-Fighters, it was probably both. You looked at your reflection in a large puddle. Your training was shot, you were covered in mud, and you smelled faintly of a wet monkey. The alpha monkey chittered at you from a high branch, shaking his head in what looked like disappointment. With a groan that seemed to echo the waterfall's roar, you tossed your phone aside and shot up into the sky, a streak of white energy heading for West City. Your curiosity had officially overridden your annoyance. Code Mauve. This was going to be a very, very weird day. You arrive at Capsule Corp to a scene of controlled chaos, which was its normal state of being. The main assembly hall was already crowded. Bulma was at the center of it, furiously typing on a holographic keyboard while simultaneously yelling instructions at a small army of nervous-looking scientists who were trying to contain a small, floating orb of energy that was making rude noises. A giant 3D image of a planet shaped like a lumpy blueberry floated in the middle of the room. Goku, naturally, was already at the buffet table, engaged in a one-man eating contest. He gave you a cheerful wave with a chicken leg before cramming the whole thing into his mouth. Krillin and Yamcha were next to him, taking bets on what the emergency was. "My money's on a rogue planet of sentient hats," Yamcha said confidently. "No way," Krillin countered. "It's definitely that time-traveling squirrel again." "I never trusted him." "He has shifty eyes." Gohan was trying to do his physics homework at a small table, seemingly unfazed by the madness around him. Vegeta was leaning against a wall in the corner, his arms crossed, radiating an aura of pure, undiluted grumpiness. He was scowling at the holographic planet as if it had personally insulted his entire Saiyan lineage. Piccolo was standing perfectly still, his eyes closed, probably trying to meditate his way through the impending madness. He looked like a stoic green statue of exasperation. "Glad you could make it," Bulma said, without looking up from her console. "You're just in time for the briefing. Now pay attention, because this is complicated and slightly sticky." She swiped her hand, and the holographic planet zoomed in on a specific location, a massive, swirling vortex of purple energy that pulsed with a gentle, doughy light. The display flickered, showing a picture of a cat playing a piano for a second before Bulma smacked the console and it returned to the correct image. "This," she announced, "is the Great Cosmic Muffin Button. According to my deep space probes, it's an ancient artifact of immense power that appears once every 1,000 years on the planet Buns-N-Thighs 7. Goku paused mid-chew. "A muffin button? Does it make muffins? Can we press it?" "Oh, no, you cannot press it," Bulma snapped, a vein throbbing in her forehead. "According to the legends, pressing the button will unleash the Muffin of Mayhem, a baked good of such catastrophic deliciousness that it could unravel the very fabric of space-time. Or, give the entire galaxy a tummy ache." The ancient texts are a little vague on that point. Vegeta let out a disgusted snort. "You dragged me here for a pastry. This is the most absurd threat we have ever faced. I refuse to be part of this ridiculous confectionery crusade." "You'll be a part of it, and you'll like it," Bulma retorted, not missing a beat. "Because the one who wants to press the button is Lord Frieza." A stunned silence fell over the room. Even Goku stopped eating. Frieza. The name still sent a chill down everyone's spine. The galactic tyrant, the monster who had terrorized the universe for decades. "Frieza wants to press a muffin button?" Krillin asked from the doorway, looking utterly baffled. "Why? To what end? Universal domination via a giant baked good?" "I don't know why," Bulma said, throwing her hands up in the air. "Maybe he's bored. Maybe he's developed a sweet tooth. The point is, my sensors detected his ship entering the Buns-N-Thighs system an hour ago. We have to get there before he does and secure the button. We can't risk Frieza getting his grubby little hands on something called the Muffin of Mayhem." Piccolo finally opened his eyes. "This is Without a doubt, the single most idiotic mission we have ever undertaken. Yeah, Goku agreed with a grin. Isn't it great? An adventure to a planet of muffins to fight Frieza. Come on, Vegeta, it'll be fun. Vegeta just groaned and muttered something about being surrounded by clowns. The mission was absurd, the threat was ludicrous, but the stakes with Frieza involved were very real. Bulma clapped her hands. Alright, everyone, to the ship. Let's go save the universe from a potentially apocalyptic desert. The team, a motley crew of the universe's strongest warriors and you, made its way out of the main hall and onto the sprawling lawn of Capsule Corp. Bulma's newest spaceship, the Hopadoodle 2, sat gleaming on the launch pad. It was a marvel of engineering, sleek and powerful, and looked ready to traverse the cosmos in style. As you all walked up the ramp, a familiar high-pitched voice pierced the air. "Not so fast, Z-fools!" Perched atop a nearby hedge, looking as menacing as a garden gnome, was Emperor Pilaf. Flanked by a loyal, if not particularly bright Shu and a perpetually flustered Mai, he struck what he probably thought was an imposing pose. This time, they had upgraded their arsenal. They were standing next to a small, poorly constructed mech that looked like a trash can with legs, armed with what appeared to be a leaf blower, a confetti cannon, and a very large butterfly net. We overheard your entire plan through our highly advanced, open window listening device, Pilaf declared triumphantly. We know all about the Muffin Button, and we, the Pilaf gang, shall claim it for ourselves. With it, we will wish for, a slightly larger empire and better snacks. The Z-fighters just stopped and stared. There was a long, awkward silence. Bulma put her head in her hands and let out a weary sigh. I don't have time for this. I really, really don't. Surrender the ship and the coordinates to the planet of thighs, Mai demanded, trying to sound tough while struggling to keep her balance on the hedge. Shu, in a burst of tactical genius, activated the leaf blower. A pathetic stream of air rustled some leaves and blew Mai's hair into her face. He then fired the confetti cannon, which sputtered and shot a single piece of blue confetti that landed on his own nose. He then fired his water pistol. A weak stream of water arced through the air and landed harmlessly on Piccolo's cape, making a small dark spot. Piccolo didn't even flinch. He just slowly turned his head and gave. Shu a glare so withering that the ninja dog whimpered and dropped his weapon. Vegeta looked like he was about to vaporize them out of sheer principle. Are you serious? This is what passes for villainy on this planet? A blue gremlin and his two feckless pets. I am not a gremlin, Pilaf shrieked, his voice cracking. I am a mighty emperor. And we will not be deterred. Activate the Pilaf bot 5000. Charge! With a battle cry that was more of a squeak, Pilaf leapt into his trash can mech. It whirred, sputtered, took 2 clumsy steps forward, and then one of its legs fell off. The mech tilted and crashed to the ground with a pathetic clang. Pilaf's head popped out the top, looking dizzy. His goal was clearly to capture Goku, a plan that was flawed on approximately 700 different levels. He didn't even make it halfway. A small, automated Capsule Corp lawnmower, sensing an obstruction on the grass, whirred to life and zipped directly into his path. Pilaf tripped over it with a yelp, landing face first in the perfectly manicured lawn. The butterfly net settled gently on top of him. Mai and Shu, seeing their leader defeated by a gardening appliance, immediately surrendered, putting their hands in the air. Bulma just shook her head and pressed a button on her watch. A small drone flew out, scooped up the sputtering Emperor, his henchmen, and the broken mech in a containment field, and flew off towards a building marked Nuisance Containment. Right, Bulma said, pinching the bridge of her nose. Now that the B-plot has been dealt with, can we please go save the universe? You all just nodded and wordlessly boarded the ship. The encounter had been utterly pointless, but it served as a perfect appetizer for the absurdity that was sure to come. The engines of the Hope-a-Doodle 2 whirred to life, and with a gentle hum, you lifted off, leaving Earth and its particularly pathetic villains far behind. Space, as it turns out, is incredibly boring. Once the initial thrill of watching planets and nebulae zip past the viewport wears off, you're left with the reality of being stuck in a metal box with a very restless group of superpowered individuals. Bulma's ship was luxurious, with comfortable seats, a fully stocked snack bar, and state-of-the-art entertainment systems, none of which mattered to Goku. After about an hour, he was already bouncing off the walls, literally. "I'm bored," he announced, doing a slow-motion backflip in the zero-gravity training room. "Can we stop somewhere? Maybe there's a planet with some really strong guys we can fight on the way." "No, we cannot stop for a fight, Goku," Bulma's voice replied over the intercom, dripping with exasperation. "This is a time-sensitive mission. The ship's autopilot is locked onto Buns-N-Thighs 7. Just watch a movie or something." "Movies are boring," Goku whined, now trying to do one-fingered push-ups on the ceiling. "Hey Vegeta, wanna spar? We can set the gravity to 500 times normal." Vegeta, who was attempting to brood majestically in a plush captain's chair, didn't even open his eyes. "I would rather spar with a talking pig. At least he would present a challenge to my patience. Your incessant whining is merely an annoyance." "Aw, you're no fun," Goku pouted. He then floated over to the kitchen area, his eyes lighting up. "Ooh, can I try space cooking?" "Absolutely not," Bulma's voice shrieked over the intercom. "The last time you tried to cook, you microwaved a fork and nearly blew a hole in the Western Hemisphere. The kitchen is off limits. You were trying to pass the time by reading a book, but it was difficult with the constant low-level chaos." Krillin and Yamcha were in a heated debate about who was the better baseball player, a conversation that seemed to have been going on for most of their adult lives. Piccolo had found the quietest corner of the ship and was attempting to meditate, though the occasional twitch of his eyebrows suggested it wasn't going well. Suddenly, the lights flickered and the ship lurched violently. An alarm blared. "Minor asteroid collision," Bulma's voice said calmly. "Somebody bumped the inertial dampener." "Goku!" Goku floated sheepishly out of the training room. "It was an accident. I was just trying to see if I could punch a hole in space-time. Just a little one." He'd also discovered the ship's internal communication system and was now broadcasting his terrible singing across every speaker. You decided to check out the observation deck. The view was breathtaking. A river of stars flowed past, a cosmic tapestry of blues, purples, and golds. It was peaceful, serene, for about 5 seconds. The door hissed open, and Goku floated in, followed by a grumbling Vegeta. "But think about it, Vegeta," Goku was saying, completely ignoring the majesty of the cosmos outside. "If we're flying faster than light, does that mean if we look back, we can see yesterday? We could see ourselves getting on the ship. We should wave." Vegeta looked like he was on the verge of a royal Saiyan aneurysm. "That's not how physics works, you imbecile. Your stupidity is an offense to science itself. If your brain were any smoother, it would be a perfect sphere." "A sphere of what?" Goku asked, genuinely curious. "Friendship." Vegeta let out a strangled cry of pure frustration and stormed out of the observation deck, muttering about being trapped on a flying asylum with the universe's biggest fool. Goku just shrugged and floated over to the window next to you. He's always so serious, he said with a grin. Doesn't he know how to have fun? You looked from Goku's innocent, smiling face to the infinite, beautiful expanse of space outside. This journey was going to be very, very long. The ship zoomed on, a tiny speck of chaos and witty banter hurtling through the silent void. Okay, we're here, Bulma announced over the intercom, her voice a mixture of relief and trepidation. Prepare for landing. And prepare for weirdness. The atmospheric readings are off the charts for silliness. The ship descended through a sky the color of cotton candy, breaking through clouds that smelled faintly of vanilla. As the ground came into view, you understood what she meant. Planet Buns-N-Thighs 7 was, for lack of a better word, preposterous. The trees were shaped like giant, brightly colored cupcakes, their leaves made of what looked like sprinkles. The rivers flowed not with water, but with a fizzy, bubbling liquid that looked suspiciously like root beer. The ground itself was soft and spongy, like walking on a giant marshmallow. As soon as the ramp lowered, the absurdity hit you, full force. The air was filled with a faint, melodic giggling. You looked around and realized it was coming from the flowers, which were shaped like tiny, smiling faces, and would let out a cheerful chortle whenever a breeze blew past. The mountains in the distance looked like scoops of ice cream, complete with chocolate syrup glaciers that flowed into fudge-like valleys. "What is this madness?" Vegeta muttered, his foot sinking slightly into the squishy ground. He looked utterly disgusted, as if the planet's sheer whimsy was a personal affront to his warrior sensibilities. Goku, on the other hand, was in heaven. His eyes were wide with wonder. He immediately ran over to one of the root beer rivers, cupped his hands, and took a big gulp. "Wow, it's delicious," he exclaimed, his face lighting up. "And it's so bubbly. Hey, Piccolo, you gotta try this." Piccolo just stared at the giggling flowers with a look of profound intellectual and spiritual discomfort. "My entire understanding of the universe is being challenged by this planet's ecosystem. It defies all logic. The chemical composition of this river should be impossible. A creature that looked like a fluffy pink rabbit with 6 legs and a propeller for a tail bounced past, tipping a tiny top hat at you as it went. It was followed by a flock of birds that chirped in perfect 3-part harmony. Krillin just shook his head in disbelief. "Okay, so the planet is basically a children's birthday party. Where's this muffin button?" Bulma consulted a holographic map projected from her wrist. "According to the scans, the energy signature is coming from the structure over there." She pointed toward the horizon. In the distance stood a colossal building that could only be described as a temple, but it wasn't made of stone or marble. It was made of what looked like a giant, perfectly baked blueberry muffin, complete with a massive, golden, glistening pat of butter on top that served as the roof. "You cannot be serious," Vegeta said, his voice dangerously quiet. "We have traveled across the galaxy to raid a giant muffin. The Great Cosmic Muffin Button is inside the Great Muffin Temple," Bulma said, trying to sound as professional as possible. "Frieza's ship is on the other side of the planet, but he'll be here soon. We need to get inside, secure the button, and get out before he shows up." Goku finished drinking from the river and wiped his mouth on his sleeve. "This is the best mission ever, an adventure inside a giant muffin. I hope there are snacks." He started running towards the temple with boundless enthusiasm. The rest of you exchanged a look of weary resignation and followed him. The fate of the universe rests on you successfully infiltrating a colossal baked good. It was just another day for the Z fighters. The entrance to the Great Muffin Temple was a massive archway that smelled faintly of cinnamon and vanilla. There were no guards, no traps, just an open door leading into a vast, cavernous interior. The walls were soft and crumbly, and the air was warm and sweet. It was like walking into the heart of a freshly baked pastry. In the center of the main chamber, on a raised pedestal, was a single, large, red button under a glass dome. The great Cosmic Muffin Button. It seemed too easy. "There it is!" Goku shouted, about to dash for it. But as he took a step, a figure shimmered into existence in front of the pedestal. It was a robot, but not a menacing one. It was sleek, chrome, and wearing a tiny butler's uniform. It had a pleasant, digitized smile on its face. "Greetings, esteemed guests," the robot said in a polite, cheerful voice. "Welcome to the Great Muffin Temple. To proceed to the sacred button, you must first answer a riddle," Vegeta scoffed. "We do not have time for your foolish games, machine. Stand aside, or I will dismantle you bolt by bolt." He powered up, a golden aura flaring around him. The robot butler didn't even flinch. "Violence is not the answer, good sir. Only the correct answer to the riddle will grant you passage. Any attempt to use force will result in mild disappointment." Vegeta fired a small Kai blast at the robot. The blast hit it dead on and was absorbed, causing the robot's bow tie to spin around like a propeller for a few seconds. "As I said," the robot chirped, "mild disappointment. Now for the riddle. I have cities, but no houses. I have mountains, but no trees. I have water, but no fish. What am I?" The Z fighters stared blankly. Goku scratched his head. "Is it a really boring planet?" "Incorrect," the robot said pleasantly. Piccolo crossed his arms, deep in thought. "This is a classic philosophical query. The answer pertains to the nature of..." "It's a map," you said, sighing. The robot's digital smile widened. "Correct. You are wise in the ways of terrestrial cartography. You may pass." The robot shimmered and disappeared. Goku looked at you, impressed. "Wow, how'd you know that?" "I've seen a calendar before," you replied dryly. You all walked forward, but before you could reach the button, another robot butler shimmered into existence. "Halt! To pass the second trial, you must perform a task of great artistic merit. You must arrange these flowers in a pleasing manner." A vase and a pile of giggling, multicolored flowers appeared on a small table. This time, it was Piccolo who stepped forward. With the intense concentration of a surgeon, he began to arrange the flowers. His long, nimble fingers moved with a surprising grace. He created a beautiful, minimalist arrangement that was both elegant and profound. The robot clapped its tiny metal hands. "Magnificent, a true masterpiece of Ikebana, you may pass." One by one, you faced a series of increasingly absurd, low-stakes challenges. You had to beat a robot at tic-tac-toe, which Yamcha somehow managed to lose twice. You had to tell a joke that made a stoic robot guard laugh. Krillin's pun about a skeleton walking into a bar worked surprisingly well. You had to win a staring contest against a robot with no eyelids, a challenge Goku won by simply forgetting he was competing and staring off into space for 20 minutes. The final challenge was a dance-off. A disco ball descended from the ceiling, and a funky beat filled the temple. The robot butler struck a pose. "To reach the button, you must beat me in the ancient art of disco." "Show me your moves." Everyone froze. Nobody wanted to do this. But then, to everyone's absolute shock, Vegeta stepped forward. "This nonsense ends now," he growled. And then, with a look of murderous intensity on his face, he began to dance. It was the most aggressive, angry disco dancing anyone had ever seen. He performed a perfect, albeit furious series of moves from a 70s dance movie, culminating in a dramatic finger point at the ceiling. The robot was so stunned, it short-circuited, smoke pouring from its ears. The path to the button was clear. You all just stared at Vegeta, who was now breathing heavily, a faint blush on his cheeks. "Do not speak of this to anyone," he commanded. "Ever." You all nodded solemnly and rushed for the button, trying desperately to erase the image of the Prince of all Saiyans doing the hustle from your minds forever. You had cleared the final traumatizing hurdle of Vegeta's Disco Inferno and were just a few feet from the Muffin Button. Victory was within your grasp. And that's when Goku smelled it. His head snapped up, his nose twitching like a bloodhound's. "Wait a minute," he said, his eyes glazing over with a familiar food-induced trance. "What is that amazing smell?" Before anyone could stop him, he zipped off, a blur of orange disappearing down a side corridor. "Goku, get back here!" Bulma shouted into her comm. "We're on a mission!" Frieza's ship just entered the atmosphere. There was no reply, only the faint sound of ecstatic chewing and delighted slurping. With a collective groan, the team abandoned the button for a moment and ran down the corridor after him. You found him in what looked like the temple's cafeteria. It was a bizarre, Willy Wonka-esque wonderland of alien cuisine. Vending machines dispensed brightly colored cubes that jiggled, and a conveyor belt carried a series of steaming, pulsating, and occasionally vibrating snacks. Goku was standing in front of a small food stall run by a short, squid-like alien with a cheerful grin and 8 tentacles, 4 of which were expertly flipping what looked like glowing blue pancakes. "One more Glor burger, please," Goku said, handing the vendor a strange-looking coin he'd apparently found on the floor. "And a side of those crunchy squibbles." The vendor chirped happily and served him another plate of the pulsating, gelatinous food. Goku took a bite, and his eyes rolled back in his head in pure bliss. "This is the greatest food in the entire universe," he declared with his mouth full. "You guys have to try this." Vegeta looked at the vibrating pile of goo on Goku's plate with a level of contempt usually reserved for Frieza. "I would not feed that to my dog, Kakarot. It looks like it's still alive." "That's the best part," Goku said, swallowing. He then pointed to a large purple fruit that was slowly rotating on a spit. "Ooh, what's that?" The alien vendor let out a series of happy clicks and whistles, which Bulma's universal translator rendered as, "That is a whispering wumpus fruit. It hums a lovely tune as it ripens, and when you eat it, it tells you a fun fact." "I want one!" Goku exclaimed, his eyes sparkling. He ate it in one gulp, and his hair immediately turned a bright electric blue. He blinked. "Hey, my hair's blue. Fun fact. The common space slug has over 3,000 teeth." He then burped, and a small cloud of confetti shot out of his mouth. "Keep him away from the fruit," Bulma yelled, as you and Krillin grabbed Goku by the arms. "We don't have time for fun facts from our food." "Frieza could be here any second." "But it's educational," Goku protested, his blue hair flopping around as he tried to wriggle free. "Come on, just one bite. I want to know a fun fact." It took the combined effort of Krillin and a very annoyed Piccolo to drag the now blue-haired, confetti-burping Goku away from the food stall and back towards the main chamber. He was still craning his neck, trying to get one last look at the smorgasbord of alien delights. "We'll come back for snacks later, I promise," you said, trying to placate him. "After we stop the evil tyrant from destroying the universe with a baked good." Goku finally relented with a sigh, his hair slowly fading back to its normal black. "Okay, but if the universe gets destroyed, I'm gonna be really sad I never got to try that humming fruit." You finally got back to the main chamber, the Muffin Button sitting there, waiting, You were ready to finish the mission. The only problem was you weren't alone anymore. Standing by the pedestal, tapping his foot impatiently, was a very familiar, very short, and very evil galactic tyrant. Frieza had arrived, and he did not look happy. "Well, well, well," Frieza said, his voice a smooth, silky purr of pure evil that sent a chill down your spine. "Look what the pathetic little space cat dragged in. A collection of monkeys and their filthy friends. I should have known you'd try to interfere with my plans." He stood there, perfectly poised, his tail swaying gently behind him. He was in his final form, the sleek white and purple body, a familiar symbol of terror across the galaxy. He exuded an aura of immense power and casual cruelty. "I must admit," he continued, a smug little smile playing on his lips, "I'm surprised to see you here. I thought you'd be busy protecting your precious little mudball of a planet, but instead, you've come all this way to stop me from acquiring the ultimate power in the universe." He gestured dramatically towards the muffin button. "Behold! The instrument of my final victory. With the muffin of mayhem at my command, no one will be able to stand against me. Every planet, every star, every galaxy will tremble before the awesome might of Lord Frieza and his catastrophically delicious power." It was a classic villain monologue, grand, menacing, and utterly terrifying. It would have been a lot more effective if his stomach hadn't chosen that exact moment to let out a loud, gurgling rumble. Frieza froze. His smug smile faltered. A faint blush appeared on his white cheeks. There was a moment of awkward silence. Goku, never one for social graces, tilted his head. "Are you hungry, Frieza? They have some really good glob burgers in the cafeteria down the hall. They're a little slimy, but they're great." Frieza's eyes twitched. The carefully crafted atmosphere of menace was shattered. "Silence, you blithering ape. I'm not hungry. That was the sound of my power building," he lied unconvincingly. "Now, as I was saying, your pathetic attempts to stop me are..." He was interrupted again, this time by one of his own soldiers. A low-level goon in standard Frieza Force armor who ran into the chamber panting. "Lord Frieza! Lord Frieza! There's a problem!" Frieza turned on the soldier, his voice dripping with venom. "What is it, you sniveling fool? Can't you see I'm in the middle of a grand villainous speech?" "It's the ship, my lord," the soldier stammered. "You know how you insisted on the new black cherry air fresheners for the bridge?" Frieza's eyes narrowed. "They have a delightful, yet intimidating aroma." "What of it?" "Well," the soldier said, wringing his hands nervously, "it turns out Private Higgins is allergic, and he's the only one who knows how to parallel park the ship. He's sneezed all over the navigation console, and we're currently stuck in a rather embarrassing position in the planet's asteroid belt. We might be a little late for the whole universal domination thing." Frieza just stood there, his mouth hanging open, for a full 5 seconds. The image of the all-powerful tyrant, the scourge of the cosmos, was completely undone by a subordinate's hay fever and a poor choice in air freshener. Before he could recover, his scouter beeped. It was another soldier. "Lord Frieza, your 4 o'clock appointment with the Galactic Dental Association called to reschedule. Also, your mother says to remind you not to forget to pick up space milk on the way home." He let out a shriek of pure, unadulterated frustration that echoed through the muffin-scented temple. Of all the incompetent, blundering, mouth-breathing simpletons I have to surround myself with. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. He turned back to you, his smile now a strained, furious grimace. "No matter. I will deal with my imbecilic crew later. First, I will deal with you. And then I will press the button. And then I will have a sensible snack. Prepare to meet your doom. The grand entrance was a bust. The villain was flawed. But the power radiating from him was still very, very real. The comical interlude was over. The real fight was about to begin. Before anyone else could even move, Vegeta shot forward, a blur of blue and gold. He came to a halt directly in front of Frieza, his face a mask of pure contempt. "This farce has gone on long enough," Vegeta declared, his voice ringing with Saiyan pride. "I will not stand by while a preening, pompous lizard and a band of circus clowns decide the fate of the universe. This is my fight. I will be the one to crush you, Frieza, and put an end to this pastry-themed nightmare." Frieza raised a delicate eyebrow. "Oh, Vegeta, still playing the hero? It's a bad look for you. You were so much more charming when you were my loyal little monkey." "I am no one's monkey," Vegeta roared, transforming into a Super Saiyan. His golden aura erupted, shaking the very foundations of the Muffin Temple and causing a fine shower of blueberry crumbs to rain down from the ceiling. "I am the prince of all Saiyans, and I am here to reclaim my honor." Without another word, he charged. He was a golden comet of pure rage, his fist aimed directly at Frieza's smug face. "Pathetic?" Frieza sighed, and then he did something unexpected. He giggled. Just as Vegeta's punch was about to connect, Frieza's body dissolved into a cloud of sparkling pink glitter. Vegeta's fist passed right through it, and he stumbled forward, completely off balance. The glitter cloud swirled in the air for a moment before reforming into Frieza, who was now standing behind Vegeta, looking completely unharmed. What was that?" Vegeta sputtered, spinning around. "A new technique I've been working on," Frieza said with a preening smile. "I call it my glitter guard. It renders me completely intangible. And it's ever so pretty, don't you think?" Vegeta's eye twitched. "Fight me properly, you coward!" He launched himself at Frieza again, this time unleashing a furious barrage of punches and kicks. Each time, just before a blow could land, Frieza would dissolve into that infuriating cloud of pink sparkles, only to reform a moment later, completely unscathed. It was like trying to punch a ghost, a very sparkly, very annoying ghost. "This is pointless, Prince," Frieza taunted, effortlessly dodging another attack. "Your brutish Saiyan tactics are useless against my fabulous new power." Vegeta was getting more and more frustrated. He tried a Big Bang attack, which Frieza simply allowed to pass through him, redecorating the far wall in a lovely explosion pattern. His attacks were getting wilder, sloppier. He was letting his anger get the better of him. He even tried a final flash, which Frieza simply parted around like a curtain. Finally, in a fit of pure rage, he backed off and raised his hands to the sky. "Fine. If I can't hit you, I'll just blow you and this entire ridiculous planet to kingdom come. Gallic gun." A massive beam of purple energy shot from his hands, a torrent of destructive power aimed at Frieza. Frieza just smiled and held up a single, delicate finger. The Gallic gun hit him, and for a moment it looked like it was working. The beam engulfed him, but then the energy began to change color from purple to a shimmering rainbow. It swirled around Frieza, and then, with a flick of his wrist, he sent it flying right back at Vegeta. But it wasn't a destructive beam anymore. It was a beam of pure, concentrated annoyance. The rainbow-colored energy hit Vegeta, but it didn't hurt him. Instead, it encased him in a giant, unbreakable soap bubble. He was trapped, floating a few feet off the ground, completely helpless. He pounded on the walls of his shimmering prison, his face a mask of utter fury and humiliation, but it was no use. "Let me out of here, you fiend," he roared, his voice muffled by the bubble. "I'll kill you. I'll write a very strongly worded letter to your supervisor." Frieza just chuckled, a sound like tinkling glass. Now, Prince. Don't get your royal panties in a twist. You just stay in your pretty little bubble and watch as I dispose of your friends. It's the best seat in the house." The Prince of all Saiyans, one of the most powerful warriors in the universe, had been defeated. Not by a devastating attack, but by glitter and a giant soap bubble. The rest of you just stared, a mixture of shock and a tiny, shameful bit of amusement. The situation had just gone from absurd to utterly surreal. With Vegeta out of the picture, it was up to the rest of you to stop Frieza from pressing that button. "Alright, monkeys, who's next on the chopping block?" Frieza asked, dusting off his hands with a theatrical flourish. "I'm feeling particularly whimsical today. Perhaps I'll turn one of you into a charming garden gnome." That was your cue. "Everyone, attack!" Krillin yelled, and the chamber erupted into chaos. This wasn't a one-on-one duel, it was a desperate, multi-front brawl. You shot forward, aiming for Frieza's left flank, while Goku went for his right. Piccolo provided cover from above, firing a series of rapid-fire Kai blasts to keep Frieza pinned down. Frieza was fast, unbelievably fast. He dissolved into his glitter guard to dodge your initial rush, reformed behind you and tried to tap you with his tail. You spun around, blocking the attack with your forearm, the impact sending a jarring shock up your arm. While he was focused on you, Goku saw his opening. "Kaioken!" he yelled, a crimson aura flaring around him. He moved with incredible speed, appearing in front of Frieza and landing a solid punch to his gut. For the first time, Frieza's smug expression faltered. He grunted in pain, stumbling back a step. The glitter guard was good, but it required concentration. He couldn't stay intangible forever. "Why, you little..." Frieza growled, but before he could retaliate, Krillin came sliding in, a Destructo disc already formed in his hand. "Heads up, Frieza!" he shouted. The golden disc shrieked through the air. Frieza was forced to dematerialize again to avoid being sliced in half. While he was in his glitter form, Piccolo unleashed his attack. Hellzone Grenade! A dozen orbs of golden energy surrounded the swirling cloud of sparkles, cutting off all escape routes. "Now!" Piccolo commanded. The energy orbs all converged at once, creating a massive, contained explosion right where Frieza was. The Muffin Temple shook, and for a moment, you thought you had him. But when the smoke cleared, Frieza was still there, looking slightly singed and extremely angry. "Enough of these party tricks!" he shrieked, his voice losing its silky quality and becoming a sharp, furious screech. He fired a volley of death beams, thin, precise lasers of deadly energy. Everyone scattered, dodging the rapid-fire assault. One of the beams hit the pedestal holding the muffin button, shattering the glass dome that protected it. The button was now exposed. "The button!" Bulma's voice yelled over the comms. "He's going for the button!" In the chaos, Frieza saw his chance. He ignored the rest of you and shot directly towards the unprotected muffin button, his finger outstretched, a triumphant, evil grin on his face. He was going to do it. He was going to press it. But you were faster. You launched yourself in front of him, a living shield. You took the brunt of his charge, the force sending both of you tumbling across the room. The fight was a blur of motion and energy, a chaotic dance of attacks and dodges. You worked together, a frantic but surprisingly effective team. You would draw his attention with a direct assault, leaving an opening for Krillin to try a solar flare, or for Yamcha to attempt a wolf fang fist, which, to everyone's surprise, actually managed to scratch Frieza's armor. Goku was the powerhouse, his Kaioken attacks keeping Frieza on the defensive, while Piccolo was the strategist, calling out orders and exploiting every tiny weakness. It was messy, it was chaotic, but you were holding him back. But holding him back wasn't enough. His power was immense, and his absurd glitter technique made him infuriatingly hard to hit. You were all getting tired, and Frieza was just getting angrier. You needed a new plan. The battle was a frustrating stalemate. Every time you managed to land a solid blow, Frieza would dissolve into his infuriating glitter guard. Every time you thought you had him cornered, he'd slip away like a sparkly eel. He was toying with you, drawing out the fight, his arrogance growing with every failed attack. Vegeta was still floating uselessly in his soap bubble, shouting muffled insults that were becoming increasingly creative. "I hope your bloodline ends with a particularly dim-witted gerbil," was his latest contribution. "Bulma, we need something," you yelled, dodging another death beam. "This glitter thing is impossible. Is there anything in your database about this?" I'm looking, her voice crackled over the comm. "The energy signature is bizarre. It's not Kai, not exactly. It seems to be powered by emotional energy. Specifically, it's fueled by a sense of smug superiority and..." "Oh my god." "What?" Krillin asked, panting. "What is it?" "His power is directly linked to his own ego," Bulma exclaimed. "I'm cross-referencing it with his psychological profile from the Namek incident. As long as he feels smug, superior, and in control, the Glitter Guard is impenetrable. But if you can make him feel embarrassed, it should weaken the field." Embarrassment. The secret weakness of the most feared tyrant in the universe was simple, profound humiliation. The revelation hung in the air for a second. How do you embarrass a being as arrogant as Frieza in the middle of a fight to the death? Goku, ever the straightforward thinker, had an idea. "Hey Frieza," he shouted, pausing his assault. "Remember that time on Namek when Krillin cut your tail off with a Destructo disc? That was pretty embarrassing, wasn't it?" Frieza's eye twitched. "We do not speak of that," he hissed. The cloud of glitter around him flickered for just a second. It worked. The weakness was real. Suddenly, everyone had the same idea. The physical attack stopped, replaced by a verbal and psychological assault. "Yeah," Krillin chimed in. "And what about when my daughter, who was a toddler at the time, made you have a nightmare about her? You were defeated by a baby's bad dream." The glitter flickered more intensely. Frieza was starting to look flustered. Piccolo, surprisingly, decided to contribute. "Your father was demonstrably more powerful than you were," he stated, his voice flat and analytical, "and taller." "My father was a brutish oaf," Frieza shrieked, but his voice was an octave higher. The glitter guard was visibly thinning, becoming translucent. "It was your turn. You had to think of something to push him over the edge. You remembered the gurgle in his stomach, the allergy report from his soldier, the call from his mother. "You're not a mighty tyrant," you shouted. "You're a fussy middle manager with a sensitive tummy and a subordinate who's allergic to your favorite air freshener. You're not scary. You're just high maintenance. Your own mother has to remind you to buy milk." That was it. That was the final straw. The combination of his past defeats, his family issues, and the sheer administrative mundanity of his problems was too much for his fragile ego to bear. Frieza let out a cry of pure, humiliated rage. The glitter guard didn't just weaken, it popped like a soap bubble, dissipating into a sad little shower of sparkles. He was solid. He was vulnerable. The tide of the battle had just turned, not with a Kamehameha, but with a well-timed, deeply personal insult. The new plan was clear. Hurt his feelings. Hard. With Frieza's ultimate defense shattered, the fight became a free-for-all of physical and emotional damage. The goal was no longer to just beat him, but to utterly mortify him. "Your battle armor makes your hips look wide," Krillin yelled while throwing a Destructo disc. "Your evil laugh is a little pitchy in the high notes," Yamcha shouted while attempting a wolf fang fist. "You have the same haircut as a horned lizard," Goku added with cheerful sincerity. Each insult made Frieza flinch, leaving him open for a physical attack. It was the strangest, most effective fighting style you had ever witnessed. Frieza was beside himself with rage. "Stop it! Stop talking about my hips!" he screamed, firing death beams wildly in every direction. His precision was gone, replaced by frantic, sloppy anger. He was completely off his game. It was time to end this. But a simple ki blast wouldn't do. The end had to be as ridiculous as the fight itself. Goku had the final, brilliant idea. "Everyone, lend me your energy," he shouted. "Not for a spirit bomb, for something better." You all knew what to do. You, Krillin, Yamcha, and even Piccolo placed a hand on Goku's back, pouring your energy into him. But you weren't focusing on destructive power. You were focusing on pure, concentrated absurdity. You channeled the memory of Vegeta's disco dancing. Krillin thought about his worst puns. Piccolo, surprisingly, focused on the time Gohan wore a ridiculous superhero costume. High above, still trapped in his bubble, Vegeta watched the scene with a look of utter disbelief. What are they doing? This is not a winning strategy. Goku's hands came together in the familiar Kamehameha stance. A ball of energy began to form, but it wasn't blue or gold. It was a swirling, chaotic vortex of rainbow colors, crackling with goofy sound effects. It sounded like a cartoon slide whistle. Frieza, seeing the massive power build up, prepared for the worst. He created a shield of dark energy, bracing for a planet-shattering attack. "All right, Frieza, here it comes," Goku yelled, a massive grin on his face. "This is the ultimate attack." The Super Saiyan God, Super. "Tickle my hom-ha." He unleashed the beam. The rainbow-colored wave of pure silliness shot across the chamber and slammed into Frieza. But it didn't explode. It enveloped him. The energy transformed into 1,000 tiny, ethereal hands that began to tickle him mercilessly. Frieza's eyes went wide. He tried to fight it, but it was no use. A small giggle escaped his lips, then another. Soon, the most feared tyrant in the universe was reduced to a writhing, helpless, laughing mess. He was laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. He couldn't maintain his concentration. He couldn't even stand up. He collapsed to the floor in a fit of uncontrollable hysterics. "Stop. Please. I can't. Ha ha ha. I can't breathe," he gasped between peals of laughter. The tickle me haim ha finally dissipated, leaving Frieza lying on the floor, weak and gasping for air, tears of laughter streaming down his face. He was defeated. Not by power, not by strength, but by a concentrated blast of weaponized tickling. Just then, a loud clatter echoed through the hall. Everyone turned. The muffin button, jostled by the shaking, had fallen off its pedestal and was rolling across the floor. It rolled right up to Frieza's outstretched hand. With the last of his strength, a final act of petulant defiance, he weakly tapped the top of the button with one finger. He pressed it. An alarm blared. The temple began to shake. The Muffin of Mayhem was coming. Warning. The Muffin of Mayhem has been unleashed. Please allow 3 to 5 business days for universal collapse. A cheerful, automated voice announced from the ceiling. A massive wave of panic washed over everyone. Frieza, still giggling weakly on the floor, had doomed them all. But the expected cataclysmic explosion didn't happen. Instead, there was a gentle ding from a previously unseen slot in the wall, like a vending machine finishing its cycle. A single, perfect, golden brown blueberry muffin slid out onto a small tray. It had a wonderful aroma. That was it. The muffin of mayhem, the baked good of doom, was just a muffin. A very delicious smelling muffin, but a muffin nonetheless. Everyone just stared at it. Bulma was the first to react. She ran over and began scanning it with her wrist-mounted device. "The energy readings are off the charts," she said, her eyes wide. "This muffin contains enough caloric energy to power a small city for a year." The legends weren't about destruction. They were about nutrition. This isn't the muffin of mayhem. It's the muffin of metabolism. Goku's eyes lit up. He appeared next to the muffin in an instant. "The ultimate snack," he breathed with reverence. Before anyone could object, he grabbed the muffin and ate it in one bite. His eyes rolled back, and a blissful smile spread across his face. A faint golden aura pulsed around him for a second. "Wow," he said, his voice full of awe. "That was even better than a senzu bean. I feel great. And I also know a fun fact about the migratory patterns of the purple-bellied space llama." The muffin of mayhem was an intergalactic superfood that also imparted trivial knowledge. The entire quest had been for a single, albeit magical, snack. Frieza, having witnessed this anticlimax, let out a pathetic groan and passed out from a combination of exhaustion and sheer embarrassment. Just then, his soldier ran back in. "Good news, Lord Frieza. Private Higgins' allergies have cleared up. We can leave whenever you're..." Oh, he saw his lord unconscious on the floor and the Z-fighters standing around looking triumphant. He wisely decided to back away slowly, drag his boss out the temple, and pretend none of this ever happened. The threat was over. You've saved the universe from... well, you weren't sure what exactly, but you'd won. Vegeta's soap bubble finally popped, and he dropped to the floor with a grunt. He looked at the empty tray, at Goku's blissful face, and at the passed-out Frieza. "We went through all of that for a single brunch item?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Yep," Goku said cheerfully, "and it was totally worth it." With the crisis averted, you all explored the now unlocked treasure room behind the pedestal. There were no Dragon Balls, no ancient weapons. The grand loot of the Great Muffin Temple was a series of strange alien devices. One was a small box that, when opened, told terrible, cringe-worthy dad jokes. Another was a ray gun that didn't fire lasers, but instead neatly folded whatever it was pointed at. You immediately used it on Vegeta's cape, which folded itself into a perfect, tiny square, much to his annoyance. The grand prize, sitting on a velvet cushion, was a small, ornate device with a single button. Bulma picked it up and analyzed it. "According to this, it's a universal remote," she said, "but it only has one function. It seems to be able to change the channel on any television, anywhere in the universe. Everyone just looked at it. A universal remote that could annoy people across galaxies. It was the most useless, most brilliant, and most potentially irritating treasure imaginable." Goku, of course, thought it was the coolest thing he'd ever seen. The mission was a success. The loot was absurd. It was time to go home. The journey home on the Hopadoodle 2 was significantly quieter than the trip out. A comfortable, exhausted silence had settled over the crew. The adrenaline had worn off, replaced by a deep-seated sense of weary satisfaction and lingering bewilderment. Goku, full from his super muffin and the subsequent raid at the ship's pantry, was fast asleep in his chair, snoring loud enough to gently vibrate the hull. A tiny, happy smile was plastered on his face, and he occasionally muttered fun facts about space llamas in his sleep. They can spit with pinpoint accuracy up to 50 feet, he mumbled, before rolling over. Vegeta was in his corner, brooding as usual, but it was a different kind of brooding. It wasn't angry or frustrated. It was a deep, contemplative brooding, the kind of brooding a warrior does after being defeated by a soap bubble and witnessing the universe's greatest threat be neutralized by weaponized tickling. He was probably re-evaluating his entire life philosophy. You saw him quietly practicing a disco move when he thought no one was looking. Krillin and Yamcha were playing cards, the game punctuated by quiet laughter as they recounted the most ridiculous moments of the fight. "I still can't believe you told him his evil laugh was pitchy," Krillin chuckled, laying down a winning hand. "Hey, it was constructive criticism," Yamcha replied with a grin. "He'll thank me for it later." Piccolo was staring out the viewport at the endless river of stars, a thoughtful expression on his face. You had the feeling he was trying to fit the concept of a tickle me haim ha into his otherwise logical and orderly understanding of combat, and failing spectacularly. You sat back in your chair, holding the joke-telling box you'd claimed from the treasure room. You pressed the button. "Why don't scientists trust atoms?" the box asked in a tinny, robotic voice. You waited for the punchline. "Because they make up everything." The joke was terrible. So terrible, in fact, that you saw Piccolo's shoulders shake for a brief second in what might have been a silent, repressed laugh. It was a calm, shared moment of winding down. The absurdity of the adventure had forged a strange new level of camaraderie. You had faced down a galactic tyrant and discovered his weakness wasn't a hidden power, but a fragile ego. You learned that the ultimate weapon in the universe might just be a well-timed, terrible pun. As Earth grew in the viewport, a familiar blue and green marble in the blackness, Bulma's voice came over the intercom, warm and satisfied. "Approaching home, team. I've reversed engineered the laundry folding ray gun. My housekeeping drones are about to become 200% more efficient. All in all, I'd call this mission a resounding success." You looked around at the sleeping, brooding, and laughing heroes. You had traveled across the galaxy for a muffin, fought a major villain with insults, and returned with a box of bad jokes. It was, without a doubt, a resounding success. The Hopa-Doodle, 2 landed with a gentle hiss on the lawn of Capsule Corp. The ramp lowered, and you all stepped out into the warm, familiar air of Earth. You were heroes. You had faced Frieza and won. You have saved the universe from... well, you were still working on that part. You half expected a cheering crowd, a parade, maybe a key to the city. What you got was Chi-Chi. She was standing at the bottom of the ramp, her hands on her hips, with a look that could curdle milk. Her focus was entirely on her husband, who was still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Son Goku," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" You missed Gohan's parent-teacher conference. The radishes in the garden need harvesting, and you were supposed to fix that leaky faucet 3 days ago. Goku's post-adventure glow evaporated instantly. "Oh, sorry, Chi-Chi," he stammered. "We were, fighting Frieza and saving the universe." "Frieza can wait," Chi-Chi said, grabbing him by the ear. "The radishes cannot. You're grounded from intergalactic travel for a week. Now come on, you got chores to do." She dragged a protesting Goku away towards their little house, his heroic return immediately devolving into domestic duty. Just then, a news van screeched to a halt in front of Capsule Corp. A crowd of reporters swarmed out, microphones and cameras at the ready. But they didn't run to you. They ran toward a figure who was just emerging from behind a large ornamental shrub, Mr. Satan. He struck a dramatic pose, his cape billowing in the breeze. "Do not worry, my adoring public," he boomed, his voice full of feigned exhaustion. "The mysterious cosmic disturbance has been dealt with. I flew into space on my own and had a fierce, secret battle with the alien menace. It was a close call, but my new Satan Miracle Muffin Punch once again proved to be the universe's salvation." The reporters ate it up, shouting questions and snapping photos. Mr. Satan was, once again, the hero of the day. He was even holding a half-eaten muffin as proof. Vegeta just shook his head and walked off towards the gravity room without a word, probably to go punch something for the next 17 hours. The rest of the team just shrugged. This was normal. This was home. Bulma clapped her hands, a wide, welcoming smile on her face. "Forget about them." My chefs had prepared a welcome back and thanks for not letting a muffin end the world feast. There's enough food to feed a small army, or one very hungry Saiyan. Let's eat. And just like that, the adventure was over. There were no parades, no medals. The hero's welcome was the promise of a good meal and the company of good friends. You walked into the bustling halls of Capsule Corp, the sound of laughter and the smell of delicious food filling the air. You were back in the chaotic, warm, and utterly bizarre world of the Z Fighters. You looked at the strange collection of people you now called your friends. You had a feeling that the next code mauve was just around the corner, and you wouldn't miss it for the world.